And joining us on the MetaShare guest line is Rennie Curran. After a successful football career at Georgia, he was drafted in the third round of the 2010 NFL Draft by the Tennessee Titans. He is now a keynote speaker, author, leadership and business coach, CEO of Game Changer Coaching. He's authored 2 books. One is called Free Agent, The Intangibles for Overcoming Adversity and Times of Transition. He also wrote a book with his daughter, which I can't wait to hear about, called What Does It Take to Be a Star? You can check out renniecurran.com. Rennie, it's great to have you on Unpacking It today. How are you?
Man, I'm doing great. So glad to be on with you all and your listeners, man. It's a blessing. So I'm excited and fired up.
All right. Well, here we go. Well, before we get into your story, this has been a big year for Georgia on
Of
the in regards to sports. And so you being a former player, how exciting was it to see the team win the national championship and then to follow that up with Matthew Stafford representing the Bulldogs winning the Super Bowl?
It was everything. Like you said, this is our season, right? It's been really cool to watch and just to know that you're a small part of the foundation that's been built. You know, the hard work, the culture, the camaraderie. It really took me back seeing those guys out there and the work that they put in and the ultimate result that they were able to achieve. And even coming back after that loss to Alabama, that was huge. I mean, you don't see at that level a lot of teams being able to respond the way that they were able to respond. And then, of course, you got to have a little bit of luck, right? Like they had some injuries and some things that went in their favor. And we've always kind of been on the other side of that. Even when I played, man, that we got close. Maybe, the system wasn't right. Like we didn't have the playoff system back when I played and different things like that. But this year, they just had all the right tools, all the right talent, all the things that fell into their place, man. They had the depth, right? So even if guys went down, other guys were able to step up. So it was just cool to be a part of and to celebrate. Got to hang out with the guys afterwards and just just it was surreal. Just seeing them finally get it done after 40 years or something like that. It's crazy.
Man, because what makes Georgia and the football program specifically special, it can just kind of in general based on your experience, and then what made this team in particular special enough to win the whole thing?
I mean, it starts with leadership, man. It really, really does. I talked to a lot of the guys before the season started, and they talked about just how well this team had, just developed their leaders, the mindset, the camaraderie. You don't have a team like that is that consistent in terms of their performance and able to bounce back like that unless you have guys that are really, really connected, really love each other, and are playing for something bigger than themselves. And so that's what I saw from this team. I mean, they have the talent. They have 5 stars. Of course, that's always great, but how many teams have you seen that have been extremely talented and then underperformed, or they had a loss and they could really bounce back? So I think that's where it started with this team, was not just the talent, but also things like leadership, that connection, the camaraderie, the love that they have for each other. And you could see it, man. Even when they lost, they got back in the weight room, in the film room, and had that come to Jesus moment, and they just built on that, on the adversity and leverage that in order to end with that win, man. So that's what I've seen is those intangibles. And Kirby talked about it a lot, even in his post game speeches, just how it's not about me, it's about we, just things like that, having that team mindset and everything. So I think that made the biggest difference ultimately.
It was impressive, no question. And now a bunch of those guys will be drafted next month. So we'll see where they end up. Well, Rennie, I want to get into your story, and you've already mentioned the word adversity, and I know that that's a key part of what you speak on and encourage others in their own adversity. But let's hear your story and what were, as you look back on your life, and I'm sure you'll face more adversity moving forward, but as you look back to this point, what have been some of the pivotal seasons in your life where you've been faced with adversity and you were able to overcome that adversity?
Yeah, I mean, it's when I look back on my life, adversity has definitely been a recurring theme. But the things that have resulted as from that adversity has been even better. And so when I talk about my story, I can't start it without talking about my parents. They were both Liberian immigrants who came from Liberia to the United States. My mom came here first in the early '80s, around the same age I am now, which just blows my mind. Like I could not imagine picking up my bags, leaving all my relationships, everything I'm familiar with, and going to Europe or Asia and just completely starting over. But that's what she did. She came on scholarship and got her master's in nursing. So I had to work extremely hard for that. My dad came, he left his dreams and hopes and aspirations and came here with my oldest sister and just put everything to the side and just, started his career. And he did what a lot of immigrants do, which is just pick up a skill just to provide for the family. And so his skill was shoe repair. And so he started that, eventually bought into a shoe repair franchise. And so just seeing how much they work, man, seeing them both build something from nothing was just so inspiring. And that like was something that I gravitated towards as an early age, just seeing the values of just hard work, resilience, leadership. There was a civil war also that was taking place during that time in Liberia. So my earliest experiences were seeing them take everything they had, send it back home, help build everyone around them, and then just going through that adversity or seeing that adversity that my family members experienced was something that resonated with me. And so when it came to football, getting out on that field, I already had something that I was playing for that was bigger than myself. I knew that there was so many other things going on in the world beyond just me trying to achieve my dreams. And as far as my whole adversity goes, it really started with football, with me being labeled undersized. And I talk about that a lot because we all have that moment where it's somewhere in our life where we're an underdog, right? We may have been doubted, we may get face rejections, we may be trying to accomplish something that we don't even know if we can accomplish it or not. And it gives us that imposter syndrome or that feeling of not knowing if we're enough. And so I faced that in the game of football pretty early on, especially going through the recruiting process, not being the typical size for an SEC linebacker. I was like 5'9.5" and 215 when I first started. And most SEC linebackers are anywhere from 6'1" to 6'4", just huge guys. And so I had to do every single thing possible to overcome that challenge, and it really started with, building that confidence, but then going to work, getting in the weight room, putting on an extra 30, 40, 50 pounds, and just really trusting in that. And then having that growth mindset. I mean, there were so many aspects of it. And then I was able to overcome that hurdle, got to University of Georgia, didn't play right away. And wasn't until about the 8th week that I actually got my first experience, my first start. But until then, I was going by faith, just working extremely hard in the dark, not necessarily getting the acknowledgement, not getting the promotion, but just believing and operating at the level of my vision. That's something that I live by now, saying, and I really like when it came to operating at the level of my vision, that meant preparing, training, and approaching every single thing that I did as if I was a starter before I actually became that starter. And that's what ultimately helped me get to that next level, becoming a starter at University of Georgia, even being labeled undersized, and eventually becoming a 3-time All-American, Buckets Award finalist, just all those things. And of course, leveraging my teammates around me. I mean, that's another thing that I talk about a lot. None of us can overcome adversity on our own. And so I had so many teammates, I mean, on and off the field, chaplains, coaches, teachers, just so many people who poured into me along with that. Got to the NFL, man, after my 3rd year and faced another road of adversity or another road bump. And that was when my coaching staff got fired after my 2nd year. And so they brought in the new staff. And, a lot of people are familiar with regime change and leadership change, but they want their own people there. And so they drafted 2 new linebackers. They brought one in during free agency. So all of a sudden, I become a stepchild, and I ended up getting cut after my 2nd year. So I'm back home, and for about 6 months, man, I'm just training, going by faith once again, training 4 hours a day. And I also got the urge to just write, to start journaling, to start understanding myself. And so I started by reading a ton of books, by doing like basically an inventory on myself, a personal inventory, just to really start to understand the skills and the knowledge and the values that I could bring to the marketplace. And that's what ultimately got me on the trajectory of where I am now as a speaker and as an author. That's when I started writing my first book. And I was only 20, I was like 22 at that time. So it's still extremely young. Ended up writing my first book by 24, free agent. And so, yeah, those are just some of the early challenges and adversity that I faced that really, like I said, it was really, when I look back, those challenges created the biggest opportunities in my life.
Gosh, that's incredible. Well, I want to unpack a little bit further that time where you are a free agent and you're
Yeah.
wondering what's going to happen to your NFL career. So as you do look back, do you view making it to the NFL as the success, or is it a disappointment? How do you kind of view
Mm.
that now, and what were you thinking in that moment as well, and how does that compare to now?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, that's where we're all trying to get to. Like as an athlete, when you're a young kid starting out, I mean, I still remember walking to the stadium for the first time at University of Georgia and just being like, man, wow, like this is it. This is where I want to be. And this is like that's what success is to you at that time. But then when you get there and you realize, man, that there's so much more to life than just, getting that signing bonus and getting to that platform. And you see guys who've been in played in the game for 10, 12, 15 years, got to the second, third, fourth contract, and they still like they when they finish, they're still lost. And it's not like, the movies. I tell people it's not like the movies where you just get to that place and then you ride off into the sunset and the credits scroll. Like, no, you still have life. You still have to like figure out your true identity outside of that jersey and everything. So once I got there, I realized, man, that this is just the beginning. This isn't the end all be all and everything. And so that's when I really, really, when I got cut, really start to learn who I really was, my true identity. What truly made me confident about myself. What was I truly self-motivated about? Like all those things that, when you strip away your job title, the money, all those things, when all that stuff is gone away, who are you really? And so that's what I started to discover. And now it's like when I look at that whole journey and just even the disappointment of getting cut after my second year and things not panning out the way that I wanted to, I look at all the skills, the talents, the relationships, and everything that I gained from that, right? So
Mm.
not just the outcome, but I look at all the things that maybe aren't always quantifiable, right? All the things that you can't measure that I gained from that moment. Things like my faith became stronger, humility. I mean, there's so many intangibles, right? That you gain when you go through different challenges. And when I look at that, man, even the ability to walk into that ability, to be at that level, it was a huge win. I mean, coming from my my circumstances, the
Absolutely.
the statistics are already 0.008%. And so when you add in the fact that I'm undersized, I got immigrant parents who didn't know anything about football, like they literally just thought it was people hitting each other, like
Uh,
all those other factors, man, it's like, golly, how could I ever for a second think that this wasn't, a major blessing? And it's just a platform that I'm now able to use because people, sports brings so many people together. So I really look at it as a huge win, even though, like I said, it didn't, from the world standards, necessarily pan out the way that I wanted to.
I love that. I love that perspective because I think as fans, his career's over, he's cut,
Right.
it's a bust, and we jump to those conclusions. But to hear your angle on it, I think is so encouraging and really the right approach for sure. And sadly, a lot of guys don't get there because
Right.
they wallow in the disappointment, and so it's so encouraging to hear how you've taken it to say, all right, now I'm going to go encourage others, and now you've got this whole career in front of you where you're speaking around the country and coaching business leaders and athletes and doing some great things, and so it's awesome. So I'm encouraged by it. But let's dive into your faith journey. And you mentioned that even going through, of course, God uses adversity to change us and transform us. And so how did that play out for you? How did your faith in Jesus start to grow and maybe even take us into to where you're at now as you walk with Jesus?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, man. I was one of those who grew up in the church, man. I had a mother who would, middle of the night, she's waking up and anointing my head with oil, and I wake up and I got the oil running down, dripping down my face. So I had that type of mom, and so I was always in the church. I was always familiar with the word, and even my grandfather, he was a bishop of the Liberian Methodist Church
Hmm,
and everything. So play the drums. That was another thing, that was a big part of my life was music. So I played the
cool.
drums in church. So I'm in the front row every Sunday. But when you're in that situation where it's just your norm and something you're always familiar with, something that's part of your culture, it's very easy to just kind of be lukewarm and not really have to know it for yourself because you're always in that environment. It's just kind of what you do. But not until I got to college and I went pro and I got cut was a time when I really, really started building my faith and really building that relationship with God. Because when I say like when you become a free agent, when you're away from that team, you're away from everything that's normal to you, the job, your career, everything stripped away. That's when you really have to depend on God. I don't care how much weights I lifted, I don't care how fast I was. at that time, like I didn't know what was gonna happen next. So the only person I could lean on was God. The only thing I could lean on was my faith and just believing that there was more to come, that God was gonna work out something great during that time. And so that really, really started my process. And then as I was transitioning out of football and really starting to get to know my identity, I started to uncover so many things. There were so many things I had to unlearn,
Ooh.
right? And that's the crazy thing about life. Like we go through so many different things early in our, whether it's in our childhood, whether it's in our career, things that like make us condition us to believe certain things, right?
Mm.
Condition us to operate certain ways that we don't even know are damaging. For example, like just even being in football and being in that hyper masculine environment, right, where nothing's ever enough. You
Mm.
hit that way, you got to get another way. You get that, you know, you make 20 tackles, you got to get 20 more. Like, and then I'm never tall enough, so I'm always constantly hearing that. And then subconsciously, I didn't realize that after hearing that so many times, that I didn't even realize that I was doing things to make up for that, right? Whether it was women, whether it was constantly trying to achieve more. I call it toxic ambition.
Ah.
So there's so many things that I was doing without even knowing it that helped me as an athlete, but in life as a man, it was damaging because I was always searching for more.
Mm.
And as a Christian, you know, in my relationship with God, I had to know that, man, with God, as long as I know that I'm a child of God, then I'm enough.
Mm.
I don't need to have more. I don't need to feel like I have to be on an NFL team to feel like I'm enough or that I'm special or whatever. Have, you know, a certain type of woman to make me feel like I was enough. And I feel like so many of us struggle with that, especially as men. And that was something I had to learn. I had to go back and do the work on myself and really uncover. And now, man, I can say I'm in a amazing place, and just with my faith, with my, you know, just understanding of myself, and just so many things, and I'm able to help so many other people do that.
Wow. No, that's incredible and inspiring, and I love this concept of unlearning, and it
Hmm.
really is so important because we buy lies, so we have to replace those lies with truth and ultimately God's truth and Scripture, and then unlearning just the things of the patterns of this world. So we have to renew our mind, which is
Right.
what Romans 12 talks about. And so as you're coaching people and working with organizations, uh you mentioned this word toxic ambition.
Yeah.
That's a fascinating word to me. So I'd like to unpack that further. What do you see just with people, and what are some ways you're especially from a faith-based perspective
Yeah.
helping them through this concept of toxic ambition?
Yeah, so I think toxic ambition, I mean, it's something that's very, very real, especially with us as men. I see that more often with for men than anything. I mean, even my own father is
Mm.
like he was building that business, and when he was in that position of being a CEO, being the breadwinner, he was the man, right? His confidence was up high, everything was going great, couldn't nobody tell him anything. But the minute that was stripped from him, right, that business left, he felt like he was nothing. You know, his
Wow.
value left. Yeah, his perspective of self left. I mean, all the skills, like I talked about, all the skills that I took away from the game, I was able to transfer that over. But a lot of people, when they leave or they get fired or they lose that business, they forget all those things that they have with them as well. So when it comes to that toxic ambition, a lot of times it's our job. It can be our relationship. It can be you know, just even the status, right? It's social media, right? It could be our following that we have, whatever the case may be. But it's like we're chasing these things, we're trying to build these things, not necessarily because it's our calling, but it's because we're trying to get to that place where we feel like we're enough. And it's just it comes in different ways. And that's what I mean by toxic ambitions. For some of us, it's like we have to get that next business, we have to get this next degree, we have to get, you know, whatever the case may be. It takes different forms and everything. So what I try to do to help people uncover that is, number one, just having the awareness that is there, you know. So really, really helping them get clear on what is it that you actually want, right, and why do you want that. So I think it all starts with just self-awareness and really, really understanding yourself, understanding your why, understanding why you're chasing these things. Because if it's just like to, you know, sometimes it may be envy. Sometimes you're trying to compare yourself. Sometimes, you know, there's just so many, I call them fuels. Like some of us are fueled by just the wrong things, right? And that's what makes it toxic. But if you replace those things that feel with something pure, right? Where now you're building that business because it's about impact, it's about influence, it's about legacy, or you're in that relationship because you're trying to fulfill what you believe that God has for you or what He's trying to build up inside of you. Then that's a different type of approach. That's what I believe, positive ambition, right? And so it's very, very deep. We could talk about it all day, man. But that's something that I see a lot. I see it with athletes, man. See it with business professionals, and something that I think really, really needs to change.
Amen. Amen. And yeah, again, with scripture saying, don't do anything out of selfish ambition. And so
Right.
that would fall right into that toxic ambition for sure. So how can we serve others? How do we serve God? And that's where we find the satisfaction and the fulfillment and the purpose and the meaning to life. God working through us and in us and being able to use all of our experiences, all of our adversity
Yeah.
for good and to reflect him in all we do. So man, I love that. That's great stuff. All right. So I do want to unpack one of your tweets recently, and
Mm.
it says it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to have someone that holds you accountable on a
Yeah.
consistent basis. Imagine where you could be if you had someone in the form of a coach or a mentor to help you in those areas of weakness.
Yeah.
And so we'd love to, yeah, just hear a little bit more on your thoughts on that and how important that's been for you personally in your own life.
Yeah, I mean, when I think about that tweet, man, and how relevant that is, I immediately go back to just my experience as an athlete. I mean, I remember when I had those games where I just thought, man, this was my best game ever. And then I come back in the film room that Monday or whatever it is, if we played on Saturday, and I'm sitting there with my coach, and my coach is like, man, do you see what you did right here? Did you see this false step? Did you see where you missed this key right here? Did you see? And I didn't even, because I was in the game, because I was in that moment and locked in, I didn't even realize those little imperfections, those little flaws. And so it
Mm,
was crucial to my development to have that extra set of eyes. And I have a saying now that I heard that's so powerful that you can't read the label from inside the bottle,
mm,
meaning that there's only so much of you that in your habits and whatnot in terms of your awareness that you can see, right? That and that you can actively change. So that's where a coach or a counselor or therapist comes in. And like I talked about before, a lot of our habits, a lot of our tendencies and patterns and things that we do, our actions that we take, are things that have in other areas of our life have helped us. Maybe from our childhood we were experiencing some tough times, and so we developed habits and coping mechanisms that helped us in that moment. But now that we're removed from that place in life, now it's like you apply it to your family, you apply it to your career, and now it's damaging you, it's hurting you, right?
mm,
And without you having somebody that is it doesn't even have to be an expert necessarily. It can be a loved one, somebody who really has your best interest, somebody who really, really cares about you, doesn't have any ulterior motives. They just want to see you succeed, to just say, hey, like, do you notice that you're doing this? You notice that
yeah.
you do this certain habit, and it can be small things that are holding people back. For some people, they can be condescending. For some people, they talk over others when others are talking. Some of us, we don't listen well. Like some of us, we're poor planners. Like, it's all kinds of things that we have, and we all have something, right? We may be really, really great at our career, but we may be disengaged as a parent. There's just all kinds of scenarios where I feel like having a coach can just help you go to the next level. And that's something that, I really, really enjoyed, is working with people in those areas of just where they don't have that awareness, or they're working extremely hard, but they don't realize that they're inefficient in certain areas. So yeah, I could talk about that all day.
Yeah, me too, because I'm a huge believer, supporter in mentorship and having
Yeah.
mentors in your life. And actually, just this week, had lunch with my mentor, and it got a little heated. He was
Mm,
challenging me, he was pushing me, and
yeah.
not letting me settle or talk myself out of something. He's like, no, no,
Hmm.
no, no, time out, and that's what we need. That's what I need. So even in the moment, little iron sharpens iron, but then you walk
Yeah.
away, and it's man, God's working and moving, and he uses people that are further along and experienced in certain areas that see us in a different light than we see ourselves, to your point.
Yeah.
So it's really, really valuable. So
Yeah, man. And I'll add in another thing. I think self-evaluation is one of the most powerful things that you can do. And I genuinely, like, since I've applied this to my life, it has changed everything. I have a progress sheet Like, when we used to be in school, we get progress reports every quarter or whatever it is. But I have a progress sheet for myself that I review every single week. And in that progress report, basically I'll go over my wins for the week. So that helps me build positive momentum and really programs my mind for success and being aware of like the good things that are happening. Because so many times in life, man, it can just be like that snowball effect where one bad thing happens and next thing you feel like, man, my life is just trash. Right. And
Mm,
so I make sure that I go through my entire week, everything that I scheduled and put down, and write down all the wins. If I had a good presentation, if I had a good meeting, if I had a good interaction with my family and just whatnot, I write all those little things down, and then I write down my improvements,
mm.
things that I need to improve on. So if it's being better with my time management, if it's I'm getting distracted, I'll write those things down. So I'm aware of areas I need to grow. And then the last thing I'll do is I'll write down my goals for that next week that are upcoming. What do I want to accomplish? What do I want to knock out? And just so on and so forth. But doing that every single week has been so powerful and just helped me to grow and be aware of myself.
I love it. Absolutely. It's hard to be disciplined to do that, but yeah, you're right. The value of that is tremendous, and uh, being able to seek the Lord as we look inward and ask Him to reveal things to us as we
Yeah,
examine our life, and ask Him to shine light on those things in our life. It
definitely.
goes a long way for sure. All right, last thing before we get out of here. The book that you wrote with your daughter, what does
Yeah.
it take to be a star? So I'm a girl dad myself. I have two daughters. So
Nice.
love this idea, and I read to my 2.5-year-old every night. So we got to add this to the rotation. But tell me about the book and how you did that with your daughter.
Yeah, so the book, man, just really came as a vision, man, from God. Like I truly believe that. It was like 4 a.m. and the idea just came.
Oh, that's awesome.
And yeah, I just started dribbling, writing down this little scratches, stick figures and whatnot. I'm not an artist whatsoever, but I got a friend who is an artist, so I reached
Nice.
out to him. He was all in. My daughter loves. She was around 7 years old at that time, and she loved just drawing and writing and different things like that. So as I was putting together the concept and the ideas for the book, I was like, "Hey, babe, how would you like to be an author? How would you like to do this project with Dad?" And she didn't know what she was getting into, so she was just like,
Uh,
"Yeah, of course." And so, she gave me a lot of the ideas that I drew from when I navigated just the storyline and the character progression and whatnot. So it's basically about a young boy who's curious about what it takes to be special in life or what it takes to be important, just like most kids. And so he goes on a journey, right, to discover what it takes to be a star. And he talks to all the people he looks up to in his community. So he talks to, the athlete, he talks to a firefighter, he talks to a comedian, he talks to a runner. And instead of them giving him kind of a cliche answer in terms of their career and their title and things that, would be viewed as success from the world standards, they all give him a different character value.
ah,
Yeah. So the athlete tells him about work ethic and working hard while nobody's watching. The firefighter tells him about being a servant. The
mm,
comedian tells him about having a positive attitude. The runner tells him about persevering and just keep going and as long as you can and just put one foot in front of the other. And who else we got? We had, I mean, so many people that just teach different life lessons, right? And then by the end of the book, he realizes that it's not, what you do that makes you a star. It's about who you are. And then
ah.
ultimately understanding that you already are a star, that God made you a star, that you just have to, work hard and continue to progress to be, to fulfill that. And so that's what the book is really about, just helping a child understand that it's not necessarily the title. If you want to be a firefighter, it doesn't matter what you want to do. It's about who you are as a person, about your heart, it's about your attitude, and all those intangibles, man. So that's what it's about, man.
That's a great message. Very cool. What does it take to be a star? So a kid's book, children's book. So very neat. Well, I'm gonna get that and read that to little Maddie. So that sounds awesome. Well, Rennie, man, great to have you on Unpacking It today. Thanks so much for all that you shared and just great encouragement and perspective and wisdom. So thanks for sharing.
Guys, thanks so much, man. Appreciate you, and God bless.
Absolutely. There's Rennie Curran joining us here on the MetaShare guest line right here on the Unpacking It podcast.